Welcome to The Choice to Grow. I'm Scott Schwenk. Through these dialogues, we'll explore fresh perspectives and discover practical tools for navigating a thriving life that adds value wherever we are. I'll introduce you to innovators and creators from across our world who embody what it means to cultivate growing as a way of life. Let's prepare together. Take a deep breath in. Hold the breath briefly as you soften your shoulders and soften the soles of your feet and palms of your hands. Then exhale like you're releasing tension and setting down a heavy burden from every cell. Now let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to The Choice to Grow. I've got a new friend and a special guest here, Mike Chang. And Mike Chang, some of you know him in a particular way, but you may not know him as deeply as I'm curious about. Mike Chang is known as a globally recognized fitness and life transformation expert. And he's particularly known for creating deep healing and providing guidance and support for those seeking to make big, life-alternating decisions. After building up Six-Pack Shortcuts, one of the most successful fitness platforms in YouTube history, Mike shifted his focus inward, exploring how to alter his state of consciousness to obtain lasting happiness, fulfillment, and inner peace. Mike has created a training system that he calls Flow 60, and this combines ancient techniques for enhancing energy and altering the mind with a fitness approach, resulting in one of the most simple and practical training systems that exist today for a state of complete health and inner fulfillment. So today, with over 6 million people around the world following Mike Chang's exercises and teachings, his training system has been proven again and again to be a highly effective approach for guiding people into emotional resilience, deep release, and expanded states of presence and inner peace. So just from that, I bet you can imagine why I was excited to have him dialogue about the choice to grow. So without any further ado, Mike, welcome to The Choice to Grow.
Thank you so much, Scott. I'm excited about the conversation we're going to be getting into. I think it's going to be a good one.
When you hear that title of the show, what does it evoke for you today? Like sitting here in this moment, the choice to grow.
Well, so today when I hear that title, two folds. I think in one perspective, I would say we have the power to choose. We can either choose to grow, or we can choose to remain the same. But it's a conscious choice. It's something that we have to be conscious of, be aware of, and actually commit to. Now, that's on one perspective. Now, on the other perspective, that I would say the phrase itself um, is almost like saying, you know, a choice to breathe. And it's like, well, either either you're going to breathe, or you're committing suicide, you can say. So there's almost like no choice, right? There's no choice. You are going to breathe. Doesn't matter. You are going to breathe, you know. And I say that for this phrase because whether or not a person chooses to grow wouldn't actually matter. And this is what the second perspective, because growth doesn't just happen by choice. Growth happens by action. And if a person chooses to grow and no action follows, then it doesn't matter.
It's just
Versus,
a mind game.
yeah, versus a person just say I choose to grow, and then they don't, or they say they don't say I choose to grow. I don't care about growing, but I'm going to help you build this thing, and I'm going to take on this task, and we're going to support these people. And fast forward 3 years later, whether or not they chose to grow or not, they grew. So that's the second perspective, so that's when I hear that title, those are the two perspectives that come up. And I think it really just depends on where somebody is, where somebody's at, how they would interpret that phrase or that title.
As I be with what you're looking at, what you're saying, it feels like two forces, and actually it's evoking the symbol of awakened consciousness and harmony physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, which is the two snakes twining up the staff, which is the symbol for the medical community. Kind of ironic.
Yeah.
But it's actually the symbol of one of those snakes is the physical life force that's beating the heart and breathing the breath. Um, the other one is understood to be sleeping, coiled 3.5 times in a subtle energy center in the base of the spine or at the
Mm,
base of the pelvic floor.
yes.
And when that begins to stir and move in a healthy way in a person, there's no choice but to go along and choose to participate with the transformation and the changes or suffer. And so when I listen to you about these two perspectives, it's like, okay, life actually grows. When I look outside the window, when I look at the plant next to me, everything is growing. Things that stop growing, entropy kicks in, and the universal course codes of creation start tearing it apart back into source energy. So, like, everything is growing until it isn't, and then there's the game we play called, "Am I going to choose to participate with that? Am I going to ride the horse, or am I going to be dragged behind it?"
Yes. It's like this too shall pass, or everything changes. Nothing remains the same, right? Everything is flowing, everything is changing, and we can call it growth, which people have this association to, to improving, or we can call it change, right? Growth is just one perspective of looking at it. Change kind of just covers the other end, which is right. I'm changing, and things are not what I would like it to be, but it still happens. Right? We can't do anything about it. Things will change. That's just the nature of life. And I think
And
when
what
we,
about what about your experience? Okay, so we've got the change piece and participating in it, and sometimes it's coming from like the ego really hustling to change to get more goodies or avoid suffering. But then there's like, so we've got change on the one side, and then we've got the change less. What is your orientation around that which does not change, and how that is leveraged in participating skillfully with change and the choice to grow?
well, I think when we return back to the place that doesn't change, we can say it's pure consciousness. We can say it's awareness, and that doesn't change. But the ego changes, the ego evolves, and depending on how much of it is active at the moment, you know, uh, that's how we experience life. And so I think it's important to recognize it, and it's not to say that we're going to operate without ego, because then you'll know how it's like to be in oneness. And in that state, you also don't recognize that you're in oneness.
Well, I don't know. That may be the first blush experience of it, but I actually am blessed to know a number of late stage practitioners, and the pervading experience, and I'm still work in progress with my own taste of it, is as the stages of ego development beyond, what where people settle out usually after high school, if you continue to grow, one is actually able to reflect on that consciousness. So there's a turning point there. It doesn't happen for people. Some people are just, their ego is having spiritual experiences and they're getting high on their breath work or getting high in their meditation or, whatever their group work, plant medicine. But then there's a turning point that seems to happen. I'm seeing it in a few of my clients as well, where they become consciously aware. It may be for flashes at first, and then it starts to get a little deeper.
Well, I think it's necessary. It's necessary when a person needs to change, or they desire to change. Mm. But it's not necessary after they make changes that are needed. That's
Yeah.
who knows what is determined needed. And that's the tricky part, right? You can never be done with it. But let's say a person decides that I need to make these changes, these habits, and that these choices are not good. I'm creating harm in my life, because these people are telling me things are falling
Mhm.
apart, right? And my health is declining. I think I've got the message. And for those that didn't, the message will come around a little harder next time. So
Yeah.
then a person goes, okay, I need to make a change. Let me be aware of what's happening, what my thoughts are, habits. and then they go and work hard, right? Make the changes. And then now fast forward whatever length of time, this is where it gets tricky because this person's gotten really used to analyzing their thoughts, being conscious of their thoughts, conscious of their feelings, conscious of their actions, conscious of how people are reacting to them, and conscious of their inner state, etc. And they gotten so used to it, it's almost like automatic. I'm always kind of conscious of these things. Well, if you're always conscious of these things, then that means you're always aware of yourself. And if you're always aware of yourself, then you can't get yourself out of the way. And so then therefore yourself is kind of always in the way of everything you do. And that doesn't allow a person to fully express, fully be, because there's always a sense of self there because they got so good at the becoming aware of it. You see, so it's like they needed to in order to make change, but at some point they need to let that go and they need to return back to unconsciousness. And not enough people yeah, in our market, in our in this topic, talk about the need to go unconscious. Everybody's always about conscious, conscious, conscious. And what happens is now you have a whole bunch of people that are conscious and conscious, and they can't seem to make things happen the way they want. And they're wondering why. And they don't realize that they are actually in the way. They may have signs of it, but they don't realize that what they need to do is directly contradicting what they got really good at doing, which is to become aware of themselves, their thoughts, their actions, their feelings, their habits, the way they treat people, and their perspective, and all of that. Now
So
they have.
what you're saying, I just want to check in just to bring the listeners along. So
Mhm.
you're a little bit using terminology in fresh ways, and one of the ways you're using being conscious is not necessarily being fully embodied in awakening. You're talking about becoming really good as an ego at certain things and becoming conscious of what I'm good at, who I am, where I go, what my things are. I'm conscious of all of this,
Yeah,
but
right.
that's only, but what we're pointing at is like it's a pinprick of what there is to be aware of. And so when you're saying unconscious, you're not talking about going to sleep or passing out. You're actually
No,
talking about going into the big world of what I don't know that I don't know and waking up to it as the larger
not that.
frame of what I am. No?
No, no, not that. As in, uh, focusing on everything outside of myself. Everything outside of myself. There's me, right? There's you. Who are you? Then we say the story, right? But then everything outside of myself, like I focus on you. I focus on
Yeah.
your words, yeah, and your feelings, and what do you want?
Yeah.
That's not me, right? That's you. Now I'm gonna focus on that picture behind you. Now let's focus on this project we're gonna talk about. But all of this stuff is outside of me. You see, it has nothing to do with me. It's you, it's this picture, it's this project, it's the audience. It's all outside of me. So to be unconscious is to say I'm unconscious of myself. Now, again, to a certain degree, it won't be 100% because without sense of self is oneness. Right? There's no more separation. I can't tell the difference between me, you, a tree, and a cup, right? It's all the same. Oneness because there's no separation. That means there's no me, viewing something else. It's just all the same, right?
Hmm.
Because there's no me. So it's not about, not having ego at all. We're going to have an ego, it's fine. But I think, most people are always thinking about themselves constantly. What they
Yeah. In
even
Buddhism, they
even
call
if
it self-cherishing,
yeah,
the poison of self-cherishing.
what they know, what they don't know, what they're good at, still them. It's like if you're good at it, why do you need to be aware that you're good at it? For what?
Well, I think this is where we start to talk about, like learning to say, do a certain set of movements. I know you've studied Qigong, doing a certain set of, and I have not in this life, doing a, learning the full set of movements and putting it together, I need to pay attention in a certain way for a while I'm learning the movements and learning how to relax into the movements. And then at a certain point, it becomes something I can do without so much ego in the matter. But there is a noticer. There is a noticer. You know, my experience is that, and everyone's experience is so unique, is that the recognition of the awareness you and I share right now, Mike, does not erase the Scottness for me or the Mike-ness. So there's the taste of the thing that is a larger me that's not personal to me. There's the taste of that perfume in our dialogue, in any dialogue, while being able to be aware of, the mouth is dry. I'm going to have a sip of water. It doesn't go away. There's awareness of cup, but there's also an awareness of I'm embedded in an ecosystem that is timeless and boundless and infinite. And when I believe the myth that I'm separate, I suffer and create suffering unnecessarily. And I try to achieve to get some sort of a feeling. When there's a recognition that there's an entirely lively ecosystem of awareness in all directions, and I get curious about participating, it's a totally different movement. Like, I don't know, I'm just getting visions of you doing your Qigong practice by
So the
yourself right
act
now.
of that,
Yeah.
the act of that creates awareness of self or intensifies awareness of self.
Mm,
It intensifies the idea of me. Now, if
mm,
there's a need, then we do it. But that's what
yeah,
I mean. Most of the time, there's no need. Let's
that's
say
right.
a person's already, they already made the changes, and they're healthier, their relationships are better, they're moving towards their purpose, and they don't realize, the conversation we're talking about. So then they will say, I'm aware of this, I'm aware of that, I'm aware of this. And so what happens is they continuously keep their sense of self here in front of them, constantly aware of themselves and aware of how great their life is or great their thoughts are, or how great, how great the universe is, that their universe or the life that they have. And the constant aware of themselves sits, that in itself isn't bad, you can say, right? But it opens up the next thing, which is judgment. And when they start to judge things as I like, I don't like, I disagree, I agree, preferences, then from there, if they judge something as dislike, then the next thing is an emotion. Now they're going to be frustrated, upset, stressed, or vice versa. And as we know, now somebody who's caught up in this constant emotions, well, they're not going to be able to be centered, and everything is just taking on that roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
So if they can if they can let go of needing to think about themselves, then they can get themselves out of the way, and they can go after what they want. So if a person, most people want things, so then go after it and go do it, whatever your actions, plans. Let's say a person doesn't want anything, right? They don't want anything. Great. Well, then you're just going to be present. But being present doesn't mean thinking about myself. Being present means being present with this physical place, right? Being present in the moment, or being present with a vision that's in their mind. You can be present with that. You can just stay in that vision. You can be present in another dimension, sure. But there's no need to constantly focus on themselves experiencing that thing, because the act of doing so gets themselves in the way, or we can say that is the cause of resistance. That is the
Mm,
root of all resistance, the sense of self.
mm,
And when a person recognizes, then they'll start to move towards letting this go. But the thing that I find, Scott, is that there's not enough people out there that is focusing on this yet. They will, but not yet. Like when I go on the internet now, I see a lot of people shaking and tapping. But I've been
yeah.
spreading that message for years now. Now I see people and they're doing that. I'm like, great, good. Let's get it out there. That was my That was my goal because it's so easy and it's really, really effective. And it's like really simple, you know? It's like anybody can do it, but not enough people knew how to do it and what and the purpose of it. So a lot of people didn't, besides hardcore qigong practitioners or
Yeah.
certain martial artists. And now it's becoming more popular. And this subject about not thinking about themselves or um, letting go of needing to improve ourselves all the time,
Hmm.
that is going to be known, I don't know,
Well,
maybe
that's based on
7
a
years from now.
basic, either known or hidden
Yeah,
deficit. Like a really, most of us didn't grow up with enlightened parents. I say this all the
right.
time, and so most of us grew up with either an avoidant or an insecure attachment pattern where there's this deficit. So I'm constantly, until I know better, using everything in my life to either prove I am enough or prove that I'm not enough, which is
Yep,
again the self-cherishing over and over and over again.
yep,
I've seen, like you, there's certain things I've been doing, offering to the world for a long time. Like I started training people in breath work 20 some odd years ago when hardly anybody even knew about it. And over a number of years, I saw people doing the breathing, like physically doing the breathing, physically having symptoms, emotions were flowing, but then going back to their same behaviors. Like they were having a prana high, and then they start grasping for the high and coming to the class for the high, but no self-examination, no like, wait a minute, how do I integrate this into the way I'm showing up in my life? Like I had to really let go in the middle of that breath work, but am I recognizing how to let go in the middle of a conversation where somebody doesn't agree with me?
yeah. Yeah, it's just like the stages or the phases, right? And then that person may just be getting high off of breath for a few years before one day they decide to go a little deeper. Right? Who knows when
Yeah.
that's gonna be?
I'm thinking about, I've got this image in my mind of one of your Instagram posts. I don't know how far back it was. I didn't look at the timestamp, but you and I believe it was your wife were leading people through ice bath. And there's this older woman who was about to get in the water, and just there's a way in which you're holding her hands and looking her in the eyes, and then your wife's touch holding her hands as she's getting in, and your hands on her shoulders, just not pushing, but just there, guiding her head under the water and up, and then holding her when she comes out. And I'm like, that encapsulates everything that lights me up about how transformation works well with a facilitator. There's attunement, there's compassion, there's support without force. And then this person was able to confront that sense of self, temporarily release it enough to have a new experience that transformed her entire life.
Yeah, yeah, that was from our retreat in Bali just this past May. Yeah, that was her first time, and that actual that that was her actual first time, but she was I think it was her maybe fourth attempt or fifth attempt. She went from not even touching the ice to then just stepping in, stepping out, and then that one was the dunk. So that was the first time she went completely immersed. But it took her these little steps,
Yeah.
and
And you weren't shouting at her going, "Oh my God, get over
no,
yourself, get in the water." Like none of that.
no, it's there's yeah, it's not about it's just making sure that people feel ready and that they have the support and they need to the person supporting them needs to be grounded and calm, and this way they can mirror that energy. They can go, well, if you feel calm in this moment, I can just copy you and I can be calm as well because I'm freaking out, but I realize you're not freaking out, so it gives me permission to trust that it's safe right now as well, because you're right here having the same experience as me. So yeah, it's
So many of my friends who are Asian American have told me the story of how their parents demonstrated love by either giving them food or criticizing them. And that it took a really long time to learn how to, one, let go of money being a god, two, to actually be able to experience a softness and tenderness towards oneself and be able to like receive hugs, compliments, love, appreciation, and like this. What's been your journey in that department of healing from your particular upbringing?
Oh man, my friend used to joke around and say, you're Asian, not a Bayesian. This is why you need to get A's. I was older when we were
Wow.
joking around because he was Asian, and so yeah, growing up, I had some strong victimhood dialogue. I was so driven to prove to them, who is them? I don't know. But them, that
Yeah,
I'm
them.
better, yeah, I had this story that I repeated for most of my life. And I can say it without even thinking about it because, you just said this like hundreds and thousands of times. And it's like I grew up in Houston, Texas. I was picked on. I was skinny and scared and poor, and parents didn't have any money. It's just, and then my uncles and cousins, everybody was more well off, and my sister and I was a black sheep. And that story was like the fuel of I'm going to show them that I'm better, and that fueled my entire life until I was 32 years old, and I worked my butt off. I mean, you know, the reason that I was able to get what I want in life was not because I was smarter than people, but because I could outwork them because of just pure will. And and then when I was 32 years old, I discovered that I wasn't the stories in my head. And that was a really big reality shattering moment, and that my whole entire life was created from that one story that kind of fueled all the others. And when I realized that I wasn't, that was really big. And then through a whole series of different things in like 6 hours, I accidentally woke up my Kundalini energy, and then I
Is
was
this
in
when
this heightened
you went
state.
through the mushroom journey you spoke about somewhere I saw?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I was in that heightened state for like 2 weeks.
Before
Uh,
you hit the heightened state in the actual journey, did you hit any place in the journey as you were kind of coming into it or whatnot where you were forced to surrender or suffer?
so yes, and the way that intention came about, I was at this event and I was listening to this talk about um, the biggest issue that people run into. Like the fundamental thing was that they didn't feel that they were enough. People don't feel that they're enough. And when I heard that, I didn't think that that was my problem, but I thought that it was interesting because she said that that is like everybody's struggle, every single person. So I said, okay, I'm gonna hold on to that and kind of put that in the back of my mind. Okay, I mean that I'll ponder on that. But then the second talk was a talk on authenticity by another person. And what he said was, if you're authentic, you don't care about how other people think of you. Because if you did, well, then you're not expressing what you want, you're expressing what others want, right? To get something, some type of approval, acceptance. So when he said that, I immediately thought, well, yeah, that's other people because I'm authentic. you know, I'm a real person. And and then I started to, think about scenarios in my life. And then I identified, well, there's this time where I did think about other people and what they thought. And then there's this time and there's that time. Before you know it, I realized, oh my God, I care all the time. I'm not authentic at all. And and I was really upset by it. Like it was really, it impacted me a lot because I actually believed that I was this really authentic person without realizing that I was not even close. And so after that moment, I told myself, I'm not okay with this. Like I'm not okay with being this fake person, which is the word that I use for myself. Fake person. I'm a fake person. No, no, no. I can't. allow myself to be this way. From this moment, I'm going to stop caring about what other people think, of me. And that was the surrender intention. And then from there, like you mentioned, like I shared before, I experienced a mushroom journey. There was some MDMA involved as well, and then I was able to recognize my ego, recognize the stories in my head, in my mind, and I spent 6 hours going through my entire life and every single milestone and seeing the stories that were created, the belief systems that were created. And during this time, I was heavily breathing because as my reality was being shattered and it was kind of scary, I was deep breathing. I just always remember people said to breathe when something, um,
Were
you
you
know,
being facilitated, or was this all on your own?
all on my own.
Okay.
That's why I always say this was an accident
Yeah.
because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know why I was doing it. I only had one intention, which was to not care about what other people think of me. And from there, because of the psychedelics, I was able to shift my perspective. And then when I shared my grew up story to some folks, I shared another version. And then I recognized as I was going through the other parts of my life that I actually shared a new version that I never shared before.
Huh.
And what dawned to me is that that new version did not fit anything in my life. And that if I was to have thought of my life in that new version, or if I have always, saw my childhood in that new version, nothing in my life would have been the same.
Hmm.
Because the whole entire drive of needing to prove, working so hard, there will be no need. Everything is
Hmm.
fine. But because I thought everything was not fine, so I worked my butt off through most of my life until from 14 when I started working to 32. And my life would have been different. And so that's when I realized that I would have been a different person just because of different stories in my head. So I said, wait, but that's kind of strange because I don't think I'm different right now. And I just had a new story, but I didn't change. I was looking down at myself and I was like, I don't think I'm a different person. My arm didn't change. I'm still here. So that means who I am, can't be these stories. The stories are just like clothes. They're interchangeable. So I said, well, if I'm not the story, then what the heck are these stories in my head? And what the heck is this voice has been there the whole time? I thought that was me. And if I'm not the voice, then what the heck am I? And that's when I had a whisper, or a knowingness come through your soul. And that's when I said, oh, right, that makes sense. Because up until then, I never even thought about soul. The idea, I probably rarely ever said that word. That's how much did not care about anything in that subject.
Hmm.
And that's when I started to go through the rest of my life, one major milestone at a time, to see what other stories did I make up. And one by one, there was a story about this, story about that. And as I was going through that, I remember, almost kind of being in a shock, because it's all very shocking for me. I didn't realize any of this. And that's when I started breathing really deeply, just in through the nose, out through the mouth, just regular, didn't know what I was doing, just breathing. And as I was breathing for a couple minutes, I felt a weird sensation on the top of my head. So then I started to touch my head, and it felt better to touch my head. And then the touching became light tapping, which then became hard tapping, and then eventually I was knocking on the top of my head as I'm deep breathing and walking around, pacing around in this room and speaking out loud to myself and to other people, but most people walked off and I was just speaking out loud to myself. Sometimes I would stretch because I felt like stretching, right? I was practicing on not caring. And I did this for 6 hours. And by the end of the 6 hours, um, everything changed. I had really bad injuries in my back. Prior to that, I mean, I couldn't lay down or walk or move without pain. I'm always in pain.
Huh.
The pain was gone, disappeared.
Huh.
I mean, I couldn't get rid of it for 9 months, and it's gone in 6 hours. And I'm
Yeah.
like really good at fixing my injuries because I'm a bodybuilder that throws weights around, so you're always injuring yourself. And it was gone. My mind, I before that I struggled to understand my managers because my mind was so loud. I couldn't understand in our meetings when we have them. They'll tell me about this problem and that problem. I couldn't connect the dots. It's like I just hear sounds, but there's no connection in my head.
Mm,
I mean,
mm,
I was scared and very confused, and I just saw myself as being this dumb person.
mm,
And I was thinking, when did this happen? Like,
mm.
when did I become like this? I don't remember. And I thought I was smart. I mean, I built this company. We're doing like 1.5 million in revenue a month. And I don't know what the heck this person in front of me is telling me. What the heck is wrong with me? And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody because I was thinking, if I told somebody, what would they think of me?
Lock me up.
They lock me up, or they'll kick me out of this position. They go, Mike, you're not suitable to be the CEO of this company. And I go, you're right, because I was the CEO of the company. I'm running
Yeah.
I'm running 7 departments.
Yeah.
And so I didn't tell anybody, but this was happening. And I was just always stressed, always fighting with my girlfriend, and just but you see, like, as an entrepreneur, I didn't think that there was a problem because, if you can't handle it, if you can't handle stress, then don't go in business, right? Don't get out of the can't handle the heat, don't be in the kitchen, right? It's like, so fine. I chose this. Let me just just
Let me
work it
try
out.
throwing
You
more
know.
effort at it. I'm just going to effort more.
Yeah, I'm gonna just man up more, just and all of this, my mind was so clear at the end of 6 hours. Let me tell you, like, I was able to understand everything, everything. There's no more fear, no more worries. My mind went silent, and my mind was so loud I couldn't understand people. It went completely silent.
Mm,
And I felt so light in my body. I was literally about to levitate off the ground. Like my
mm.
chest was floating up and my arms are floating up, and I'm walking around like I'm on helium, just like on a cloud, like a person stuck in a static dance mode,
Yes,
just
yes. I've had
walking
this
around.
experience. I'm like, I'm not, am I floating? I think I'm floating.
And I'm like, I'm a bodybuilder who's got a really heavy body and everything is always heavy and dense. This is not my body. My body never was light. What's going on? And I
Yeah.
felt so good. So I made that's when I made two promises to myself. The first promise is I'm never gonna go back to how I was because it was like being in a dark hole in the ground, chained up, blindfolded, just it was so bad. But I never knew it was that bad because I never experienced feeling that good. So there was no reference. And once I felt that good, I'm never going back there. Forget that. This is what I've been looking for my whole life. This is real happiness, except I don't even know if this is called happiness because I don't even know what this is, except the fact that it's happening. And I don't want to ever let it go. But what's the chances of me holding on to whatever this is when, number one, I don't know what this is. Number two, I'm 32 years old. I've never experienced this. Nobody I know ever experienced this. And what's the chance of me just waking up the next morning and everything is back to normal? And I
Pretty
thought
high because a
logically,
lot of people have peak experiences that are a big deal, but then they don't have the infrastructure in their nervous system or their life to hold it.
right. So I thought logically as well. I go, yep, I think I'm going to wake up the next day. It's all going to be gone. And it'll just be this great experience, and that's it. And I said, no, 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 no. I'm going to do everything I can to hold on to this. I don't care what it takes.
Mm,
I'm going to sacrifice because as an entrepreneur, it's all about sacrifice. It's always trade off. And I said, I'm going to trade off everything. I'm going to sacrifice everything. My business, my car, my house, my clothes. I don't need anything. If I can just hold on to this state, this way, whatever this is, if I can just be this way, I'm the
Did you
happiest
sell
person.
everything?
So so check this out. So then that night, I'm telling my partners, my two partners, business partners, and they're like, "Oh, great, yeah, that's nice, Mike. Are you having this great experience?" Mike's on mushrooms. Yeah, yeah, he's having a great time, right? That's what they're thinking. So then we go back to Austin, and then I go, guys, you know, I'm gonna figure this out, and that was my first promise. And the second promise was, I told him, I was like, I'm gonna figure this out, and then we're gonna teach everybody. I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna figure it out. Trust me. Whatever it takes, I'm gonna figure it out. And then we're gonna reach everybody because we got the largest channel on fitness on YouTube. Like we've got a strong reach. We're gonna impact a lot of people. Like everybody wants this. I'm telling you. It's like it's amazing. Just give me some time, and I'm gonna figure this out. And they looked at me and they were like, "Well, we can't do that. Like Mike, we got a fitness company. We're in fitness. We can't do whatever that whatever that thing you're wanting to do, And I said, yeah, we can. I go, we're the boss. We're the owners. We can do what the heck we want. We started this in my freaking bedroom. We can do whatever we want. And they're like, no, look, you don't understand. Like, Mike, we got salaries to pay. Like we can't just randomly try something. Just we got, we got a legitimate thing. Like we gotta stay in our lane.
Hmm.
So I looked at him and I said, you're right. I totally understand. So that's fine. I'll do it myself. I'm out. And they were really surprised. They're like, wait. You should wait a little bit. You should think about this. Sleep it over, and we'll talk after a little while. I said, no, no need to think about it. I'm clear, very clear. Everything clear as ever. Don't worry. We'll figure out my exit. We'll get my replacements. But I'm out. I'm gonna figure this out.
What did you
And
feel in your body when it really sunk in that you had communicated that you're out and you knew you were out? What did you feel in your body?
nothing.
Nothing. Not like a signal of like, oh yeah, this feels like I did the right thing, or I feel a little scared, or just
No,
present.
nothing.
Hmm.
I was so the next day I'm talking to my girlfriend and and I was telling her, how great I feel and I told her how sorry I am for all those years of treating her just, in that way. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry." It's just got a realization now, see everything. And then I mentioned to her about mushrooms. The moment I said the M word, she just stopped listening. Just what you did, and she was just not okay. It was just like da da, and I was like, no, 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 no. You don't understand. Like I'm glad I did because I would have never had these realizations. And don't worry, I'm gonna from now on everything's gonna be different. Like I'm not gonna be doing. And she's like, no, no I, how could you take these? They're drugs. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like this is the best thing. And she wasn't really open to to hear my story. So then I was just sitting there and I said, "Well, I'm I'm not going to just stay away from that. I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna do whatever it takes to figure it out." She's like, "Well, you can't take that ever again." And I'm like, "I I can't promise that because I don't even know what this is. I don't know what that have to do with it. I can't have any boundaries because I'm gonna figure it out. I don't care. I have to go to the end of the earth. I'm gonna figure this out."
I just want to double click under that two major areas of your life where what other people thought of you used to be a really big deal showed up right after you had this transformation to see if you were really ready to let go of being organized by other people's opinions. I mean, those are two really big deal places in life for most of us. And that
Yeah,
clarity sounds like it just kept refining itself rather than questioning itself.
right. So that conversation with her, I told her, and we're done.
Yeah.
And that was like a day or maybe 2 days after I told my partners we're done. Like there was no hesitation. There was
Yeah.
no, did I do the right thing?
You just knew.
It was so clear. I remember I was as she was talking and just complaining, and I just sat there and watched her. And I suddenly realized how why some people would just go into the mountains and just be by themselves and just live by themselves. And at that
Mm,
moment, I imagined myself being there and just being in a mountain by myself and just live. And I would feel so happy. I didn't need anything.
mm,
That state, like nothing, nothing.
yeah.
And I'll always remember that, because after 2 weeks, the state dropped. It dropped probably at least 50% or so. My crown stayed open. It never closed. The rest of the channels, some closed up, some would open and close. They would alter. I can feel it. But this never closed.
Mm,
Always open. Like I can just bring my awareness to zoom, just right up. And since that day, I started to dive into everything I get my hands on to figure out what really happened, and what was it, how did it work. And within about a month and a half, 2 months, I'm looking around me, and everybody around me is interested in consciousness, spiritual awakening, all this stuff. It was like I entered into Harry Potter land. It was like I entered into this whole new world, because before that, I'm surrounded by just fitness people and entrepreneurs. Nobody talks about, you know, um, mystical stuff, or planetary alignments. I mean, nobody talks about cacao ceremony. What the heck is that? I mean, and suddenly I'm there, just everybody's just like they're saying a different language. It's like, and I was so fascinated because everything is new. It's just like this little kid, at this candy store, just like curious. I'm just sitting there having conversation with people and just learning and learning, just being so surprised. And I was just going all in. Everything was new. Oh my god, everything. I mean, I had crystals. Like the only time I ever had experience of crystals was my mom giving me crystals when I was 16 years old, and I moved out with my sister, and we had our first apartment. And the apartment was, she said, it was really bad energy. She put crystals in the corners of my room,
feng
of the
shui.
living room, and suddenly everything was fine. I had no idea why, but I wasn't gonna argue about it, because suddenly I felt good and all the stuff that was happening stopped. That was my
Hmm.
only experience, like 16 years ago. And since that day, and then suddenly, I'm in this whole new world. And
How did this journey, this transformation, or the first stage of it, because it sounds like there's multiple chapters, especially after the state dropped 50%, but how did it impact your capacities for empathy and compassion with others?
well, during those 2 weeks, my empathy was really, really high. I mean, it was so high I can see any picture, any room, and I know what the person's feeling. I know what they're thinking.
Mm.
It flows out like words. Any
And it
picture,
wasn't
any drawing,
overwhelming.
nothing, not at all. There was no overwhelmness. Like there was no sense of it at all.
Yeah.
Afterwards, when the state dropped down, um, I'm still, you know, much, much, 100 times better than before. But realizing where I was and how unconscious I was to everything, there was there was a lot of understanding, a lot of compassion. But the truth was, though, I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to be, because I I wiped everything clean, you can say. And I was disconnected from programs, beliefs. I cleared a lot a lot of the emotions where there was like habits, all these things. I wasn't attached to things anymore. Not let me rephrase that. There was still attachment, but there wasn't. I didn't know which belief systems were right and wrong, what things that were right and wrong, and so it was really difficult to operate. It was like I'm an adult with adult experiences that I have for 32 years, but yet I couldn't trust any of the experiences because I questioned everything, because I knew that I didn't know what was good for me and what wasn't, because the last thing I want to do was to go back to create the same reality and outcome. But I didn't know how to create a new one. There was no guidance, there was no teacher, there nobody.
Hmm.
So it was very strange. You know, it's like on the outside, somebody looks at me, you're like this that guy that built this successful YouTube channel and fitness, operation. And on the inside, I felt like this little kid that's just, learning about life. And so I mean, the way that I was in those years was very, very, very different. I'm so different now than the earlier days, because now I rebuilt the programs. Yeah, the
Hmm.
programs are running again, but before there were no programs. It's like they I wasn't attached to any of it. There was no unconscious responses. I was aware of everything, and I trusted nothing of how I do things, because I my choices is what created that life, and I didn't want any part of it. I wanted to create a new life. But what part do I take in and what part do I let go? Like, what part do I keep and let go? Like, I don't know. And there was nobody to ask. And there's choices to be made at every moment. And so I just became like a sponge. I'm learning from anything and everything and just experimenting.
Were there
And
some key mentors that really were helpful and transformative through books or through in person with them?
I started to read. Before that, I didn't read.
Huh.
I didn't read. I really didn't. It was sixth grade when I read. And then I started to read. The reason I read is because I I ran into a man. I was at this party. This was maybe like a month after this experience. I'm at this party, and this guy comes up to me. He's like hello, and I just say, oh, hi, it's good to meet you. He goes, hi, yeah, and then just said hello, and that was it. So I didn't think anything of it. I run to him later on that night, maybe around like 12 at midnight or 1, at this diner, and I see him again. I was at the diner. He comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, can I sit down?" And I go, "Sure." He was with a couple friends, and then he told me, he's like, "So, Mike, right?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "So, 2 weeks ago, I didn't know who you were. However, my angels told me about you and said that I need to help you. So, so I'm here, and whatever you need, you have access to all my resources, and just whatever you need to help you out." So I said,
Okay.
"Okay, all right." Like, I've been hardcore studying for a month, right? So there is no freaking out. There's nothing is strange now, right? Like, what happened to me a month ago, nothing is strange now,
Well, and you
So,
must have liked his energy enough because I mean, I get hit up. I'm sure you do way more than I do. I get emails, unsolicited emails every day about people wanting to help me out. When it's really they're looking to help themselves out. They're looking to get on my payroll.
well, he said that, and I said, okay. So I sat there and I thought, and I go, okay, well, I have some questions. He goes, yeah, sure. What do you got? And I go, um, well, what happened when we die, after we die? And what is enlightenment really? And also, how do we astral project? And and I just started firing. What's the
All at
purpose of
once.
life? Yeah, just rapid fire. And he's like,
Yeah.
uh huh, uh huh. I see him writing something, and he's just like saying that like a therapist. Uh-huh, yeah, yeah. He writes something else, and then I fire off maybe like 8 questions. He goes, okay, and to see him writing, and then he hands me this receipt. He just wrote on the receipt, and there are 16 books. And he goes, so this book is going to talk about enlightenment. It's really good. And this book talks about astral projection. And he's the one he introduced me to uh, Journeys Out of the Body, Robert Monroe,
Yep.
and Destiny Out of the Body as well. And he's the one that told me to get the Paramahansa's book, Autobiography of a Yogi,
Such a good
Wings
book.
of Freedom with this other yogi guy, uh, and just Four Agreements, and Toltec, the Toltec something, and so it's just a lot of books. And I said, okay. And I just went on Amazon the next day and I ordered all of them. And he gave me his number and he goes, hey, if you need anything, just call me. I said, okay.
Hmm.
So then the next day he sends me a message and he goes, hey, mind if I swing by? I said, sure. So then his friend drops him off and he comes to my house and no intention, like I didn't know what we are gonna do. It just, yeah, sure. I'm like a sponge. Like if you know things, come, let's talk.
Yeah.
And so he came by and he talked to me and he talked to me for 9 hours straight. And it was mostly him talking. Like I talked maybe an hour at the most. It was just him downloading me on everything. Everything that I had questions on, and pretty much most things that I had no questions on because I was too new to even ask. I don't even know. He's just telling me everything, telling me his story, his background. And let me tell you, that one conversation lasted, it gave me so much insights that I used it for the next 3.5 years. Because
Hmm.
there were things that wasn't applicable. He's like, okay, so in the future when this happens, here's what you need to do. And I remember like a year and a half later, 2 years later, 3 years later, I would refer back to that conversation. And I remember he told me that that's what I need to do because there was no reference. Like, something interesting happens. I have no idea. I'm search on the internet, but I remember the conversation. He pointed this out. And so it gave me some guidance. And I was so grateful. I didn't realize how important that conversation was that night, but over the years, I started to realize it. And even till today, he's still a good friend of mine. And now when I talk to people, I don't know what my conversation is going to impact them on, and I don't care. I just know that there might be a chance that it's the thing that's going to help them out, or it just might be a little seed to sprout later on. Who knows? I don't care. I just know I'm going to just broadcast and just share to whoever wants to hear or who I feel needs to hear. And I'm just going to, with all my energy, don't hold back anything. I'm just going to say whatever I feel is authentic or whatever uh, I think they need or what they're asking, because we don't know what our conversation is going to do. And I had
Hmm.
a handful of these. That one was really, really impactful, but I had a handful that just changed everything. You know?
What have you learned from that point on when you started sharing stuff? What have you learned? I know I've learned so much as a teacher and a facilitator through just a lot of experience, some easy, some hard. What have you had to learn about how you teach, how you share, how you frame things, and how your ego is involved or not in the teaching process? Like example being for me, I remember early on in the first kind of 10 years, like really exacting a lot more force than was ever useful or necessary. And it got a lot to happen with people, but it was expensive to me. So I had to learn the lesson of like, do less, like, learn to energetically draw them out without giving them all the answers and spoon feeding. I had an early mentor who's the one who actually trained me to train people in breath work. And he would say, you spoon feed people too much, Scott. You try and give them everything. I didn't see that that was my need to fit in, still showing up in different ways, trying to give them everything, go over time, give them extra time, give them books, give them this. And I had to learn, wow, I'm not giving them the space to develop their muscles. What kind of lessons have you had to learn as a teacher around that kind of thing?
So I had different types of, do it this way, do it that way. One of them was like what you mentioned, right? Just give them space and don't do too much. And then the other one is just give them everything you got. And then I came to realize I don't feel like there's a right way or a wrong way. It's like some people need this and some people don't. Some people give me everything, go above and beyond, and I will receive everything and execute like you don't even know. And then some people would just be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, okay, thank you so much. I gotta run. And you're like, you canceled your meetings to just help this person. We never know. So personally for me, now I do what I feel is right at the moment. I don't have any structure on it. I really don't. If I feel like just broadcasting and just going above and beyond, and as I'm also present with what's happening, because there's what I think is right and to do at this moment, but at this moment I'm also observing what's happening on the other side as well. And so the combination of the two, if I'm energized and I'm ready to go in and share, and then I can see that it's not received, it doesn't want to be received, and therefore it's turning into force, and I notice it, well, then I'm going to draw back because I don't want to force this person. But on
Yeah.
the other hand, if I'm doing that and the other end is receiving it, great. Or if somebody goes, give it to me, I'm so beat. I'm just so tired. Then I'm just going to give them what I got, but it may not be that much because I don't got any more.
Yeah.
So I don't I don't operate off of any this is this way or that way. I just I just do what flows in the moment. I'm just present. I have a natural there's a natural tendency. My natural tendency is like the way we are now. Like we're in person, we'd just be like this.
Yeah.
If when I talk to my wife, we talk like this. I don't even
Yeah.
change my tone. We just talk like this. So that's just kind of natural. But if I see the other person and it's like rubbing them the wrong way, then I would tailor it back. But if everything is fine, I'm just going to just go on the flow and just do what feels good.
I imagine a big learning curve for many people could be, and maybe has been for you, having children. You have kids, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And so that's a whole other thing. Like their capacity is whatever it is in a given moment. And like mom and dad might want them to experience or feel or do some sort of a way, but like the empathy goes, oh, he's tapped out. He's tapped out. I can't get him to do more. And if I try, it's going to create, trauma for him.
yes. You know, the a big lesson that I'm learning all the time. I'm always having to be reminded. Uh, is accepting them for where they're at, accepting them at the stage that they're at. I have intentions, but I also need to see this is where he's at and just let him be there. Let him be there. But then at the same time, there's that question of, well, when do you know to just let it be, and when do you know you need to step in? And because another friend of mine told me this line, and it's like one of those things. It's another random conversation. We talked for about like 30 minutes, and this one line out of the whole conversation stood out for the last 5 years already, and it is have the strength to change what needs to be changed. Have the strength to accept what needs to be accepted, and have the wisdom to know the difference. And I remember listening, and it wasn't exactly the way that I was fully operating because I thought, um, just accept people who they are, accept myself, accept everything, be present with everything. But what he said was not that. What he said was basically, if you need a force, force, and if you need to accept, accept.
It
You
sounds like
know,
it comes from the serenity prayer. God grant me the strength. That God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
yeah, yeah. That's that's it's very similar. Maybe it was that, and over the years, the words
You adapt
changed a
it,
little bit. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But the essence is like that. But that discernment piece, like discerning, like, is this my unprocessed ego having an agenda, or is this actually the best way forward for everyone involved? And how do I know, what is my way of knowing that? Is it just a thought I have? Is it a somatic sensation through my body? How do I know what I know when I feel it's true and right and good?
I don't even question it.
Well, that's
I
when I
don't.
think knowing is knowing. You just know. But I'm
Yeah, because
thinking, because I'm thinking of the listeners, right? People are such a spectrum of development, and there's people listening. They're like, "Wow, I want to know the way these guys are talking about knowing." I'm not sure I recognize the difference between my thoughts, my ordinary thoughts, and that way of just knowing something, just full being. I just know.
well, a person can do this. Let's say they they don't question themselves. Don't question yourself. Just go and say what you want to say, do what you want to do. And now two things will happen. Either A, you did the right things, or you did it in the best way, and everything is fine, right? People are happy, the outcomes are great. B, people are not happy. The outcomes are not great, right? They told you, God, leave, and you were just, you really hurt me, my feelings in what you said, and okay, so then if a person comes back or there's a very obvious outcome that the situation is not good, then it's very clear. Change. Change that thing. Don't do it in that way. Now, and vice versa, if there's no clear response, reaction coming from others or coming from the deal, then everything is fine. But always be confident in what you do. Don't ever second guess yourself. Because this is what I tell my students. I go, there are people who are really smart, they know the answer to everything, but they're unconfident. And so they don't trust themselves. I mean, they're so smart, they know they are accurate and everything, but they don't trust themselves. They don't have any belief. And so when they share things, when they communicate things, it's with a sense of doubt. But they're right. Now, on the other hand, there are people who are wrong, who don't know the thing, and they also communicate with doubt and and lack of trust. Now, there's also the opposite. Somebody who knows the correct things and say it with confidence, or people that don't know the right things. They know the wrong things and they say the wrong things with confidence and self-trust.
Yeah.
So I said, so in this case, if you practice, you can either know the right things and be unconfident, or you can um so I told him, so here's what you need to do. Practice just being confident and let go of doubting yourself. And even if you say the wrong things, say it with confidence, say it with full self-trust. And then when you figured out that it was wrong, great, make a change, and next time say it with full confidence and say it with full self-trust. And if it was wrong, great, make a change. And next time, say it with full confidence, say it with self belief. And then what happens is whether or not you know the right or wrong answers doesn't matter, but you will always be confident in your expression and who you are.
Reminds me of,
And
have you heard of Jefferson Fisher? He's been making the rounds. He's got a book out. It's called The Next Conversation. He's from a long lineage of trial lawyers and judges who know that their business is not the law, their business is communication. He's in his 30s. He's really good at it. And he says, whenever you say something, he says a lot of good things, say it with confidence, say it with control, and say it to connect. And that's the piece that I find that some people are missing. It kind of reminds me of, to a degree, the compassion we were talking about. Chogyam Trungpa, who was one of the first Tibetan monks who fled the Chinese regime and then made it eventually to the States and founded Naropa University and Shambhala meditation and like this. And he would say, there's a lot of people out there who have some degree of wisdom. He says, but I say this, unless you've suffered enough, I don't trust your wisdom because it has no compassion in it. There's no ability to really connect, to cross a bridge with people. That compassion piece from having gone through suffering and understanding that the life for most people is suffering.
yeah, I think it's true. But when I express, I just let it be. I mean, I just say whatever is there at the moment. There's
Yeah.
and and maybe I did too much, right? I didn't do enough.
Hmm.
If it's the case, I'm gonna find out. Maybe I find out right away, or maybe I find out late. But
But that's
maybe
the
I'll
cool
find.
thing is you're open to the feedback loop. You're not
I
just like, I know best and everybody else can go F off if they don't like
no,
what I say. You're like, you're paying attention for the feedback from life.
I'm okay with doing a crappy job. Is what I'm okay with. Honestly, like I don't care. I'm okay with doing a crappy job. What's the big deal? Who cares? All right. So I'm just gonna say what I want to say, and if I do a crappy job, I do a crappy job. Good. You go tell me, hey, Mike, you did a crappy job. Oh, great. What can I improve on? This. Oh, great. Thanks. And next time I'm gonna deliver, make it some changes, and then not care if I do a crappy job. And who knows? Maybe I do a crappy job or a good job. Who cares?
Well, tell me if I'm following it, because it doesn't sound. It sounds to me like it. When you say you're open to the feedback, I hear that you actually do care. It's just when you say I don't care, it sounds like what I'm hearing is back from that mushroom journey is that you're not letting it contract your sense of self if you've messed up. Like you care to grow. It's obvious. I don't think we'd be having this conversation and you wouldn't be listening to feedback after the fact. You care to grow, but you're not making it, you're not letting what people think, or even if you mess up and you know it, you're not letting it crush you or tell you who you are. Am I following?
So growth is gonna happen either way. Like you can't stop it.
Yeah.
And so I don't focus on growing. There's to me there's no need,
Hmm.
because that's like me focusing on living.
Hmm.
Like like no, I'm gonna focus on eating. I'm gonna focus on sleeping and moving, and and by default I'm gonna live.
Yeah.
And so I don't focus on it. I focus on the moment, and I focus on people, what they want, what they need, how can I serve them. And part of serving them is listening to them, hearing what they're saying, hearing what they need. Uh,
Amen.
and I'm trying to serve them. So they go, Mike, can you serve me in this way?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
But that's very
sure.
different than people pleasing, because if your inner knowing is like, no, I actually can't serve you in that way, that doesn't feel productive, or I'm just absolutely not available for that kind of
And then I just,
engagement,
and I
that's
say I
it.
can. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's
Okay.
this openness that also has clarity about boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. I- If for the listeners, I want to dive into some specifics because it's going to leave a lot of questions. So here's something that I figured out over years. So then that means there's still a sense of self there, um, but how do we make a plan but not be attached to the plan, right? How do we go and share authentically but still listen and care? So we have different layers of mind. There's different, or you can say, the level of our ego adjusts. And what I realize is that when our conscious mind is loud, when we are having a strong voice inside that's about ourselves, I am this, I am that, I want this. When that is happening, this dialogue in our mind is loud. That means our ego is big at the moment, especially when we're focused on ourselves. The more we're focused on ourselves, the bigger the ego. So then when we calm that voice and we silence the voice. So if I listen to my mind, there's no sound. But I can still be aware of myself. There's just not a dialogue of I this, me that. But I'm aware of myself. So then ego is still present. But once I'm not having a dialogue in my mind, ego is already lower. So if I do get upset about something, the intensity of the emotion is lower. If I do get attached to something, the attachment level is lower, but it's still there because I'm still aware of myself. So then now I take the next thing. I let go of being aware of myself. So then what am I aware of? Well, take a pick, this tree, this person, this project, something outside of myself. And then now the ego shrinks down even more, but it's still there because I can still tell the difference between me and everything else. So there's still ego, but it's lower. So now when I make plans and they don't happen, or when I do a crappy job, the attachment or the upsetness is less in intensity. And so I found that for me, I just I stay often in that last place, second to last. I bounce around, and
Mm.
sometimes I'll shoot up, and then I notice a dialogue in my head, and I'm thinking about myself. And then once I notice that, the second thing I notice almost immediately is emotions, strong emotions come through. And then when this happens, I go, oh, right, let it go. And
Yeah.
then I bring my attention back to the present, and it drops down to level two. And then I can shake around a little bit, clear some energy from the body. The mind clears a little bit. I'm back, no big deal. And so it happens, but it's not very often because I spent so many years practicing and unconsciously practicing, because it's almost contradicting. If you're wanting to practice, the act of wanting therefore prevents you from doing this.
Yeah.
So it's like this delicate delicate shift. And the way I found this out, because before I thought it was all about thoughts. I thought it's just about clear your thoughts, and then everything is great. And then I realized that it wasn't thoughts, it was more. And the way that I realized this was before my first child. My wife was 8 months pregnant, and we were in my bedroom. This was in or our bedroom, and we're in Bali. And she was sitting on the ground, and we were talking about something. And then she looks up at me and she goes, "Mike, so what are we gonna do? Like, baby's coming." And we're 8 months, so she's huge. She looks up, she's like, "Baby's coming, and we're running low on savings. Like, what are we gonna do?" And I told her, I was like, "Well, yeah, no problem. I'll go ahead and film the programs. We'll build a website, and then we'll do this, we'll do that. Because I'm good at sharing those things." And she looks up at me. She goes, "Well, but you've been saying this for the last 3.5 years. When you gonna do it?" And my finger came up and my mouth opened. I was about to go and just defend myself. "Oh, no, no, no. Here's why." I was about to, but I didn't. I just had my finger up and I looked at her, and I realized that there was no need to defend myself, because I realized this is what I was about to do. I'm about to defend myself, and there was no need. She she was just telling me the truth. She was in no type of like attacking. She was in this almost very neutral, almost like vulnerable, because she's like so pregnant. And I was like, wow, she's saying the truth. So then I put my finger down, closed my mouth. I just looked at her for a moment, and then I said, "Okay, I'm gonna do it." And then I walked out of the room. And I remember clearly it was about almost 9 o'clock at night, and I got to work. And I worked till 2 a.m. that night. And then I went to bed, and then I woke up the next morning and I worked. And I worked all the way till night, and I worked every day like that.
I'm feeling
And
such a burst of joy and love in my chest. That's service. That is service.
I just and and then here's the test, right? So my son is born. My sister's not doing well. She was diagnosed with stage 4 cervical cancer,
Oh
um,
man.
like maybe a couple months before then. So then my son is about maybe 2 weeks old, and I get a call from her friend that says Annie's passed. She's gone. Can you come to the U.S. to go to the funeral, wrap up a lot of stuff? And I'm here, and I've got my wife that needs me because she's just 2 weeks in, right? And then there's my sister just passed, and I'm full blown working every day.
Yeah.
And so I had to be really truthful to myself. And I said, and I looked at it and I asked myself this question: Where am I? What would what would happen if I didn't go there? How can I help? How can I serve this situation? What's the most important? And I realized the most important, well, she's gone already. So the funeral stuff, all this stuff, is that as important as her life, or is that almost just it's just like, to me, it was like almost just details. Like, life is the most important, not the clothes, not the ceremonies. Like, to me, it was life. And the other one was life. What would happen if I'm not there? For my wife and son. So I told her friends, I was like, I can't come. I'll do what I can from here. So then I was just the person that was, just helping everybody with their emotions and just talking it through and making decisions while I'm there serving my wife and son. And in between all of that, just working. So now fast forward 6 months from the day that I told her I'm going to start working. I looked down one night and I realized I got so much work done in the last 6 months, regardless of having a newborn son. Sister passed. She's only a year and a half older than me. And I got so much done. And I remember scratching my head and going, how did I become so productive? How could I have done so much? Like, am I doing a new strategy? Did I learn something? And I realized, nope, nothing's changed. I haven't dived into anything. And then I remember looking at my calendar, and my calendar was full, meetings and all this stuff. And I remember that 6 months prior, I didn't want to work off of a calendar. I didn't want to have this thing control me.
Mm,
And now I don't seem to care. I
mm,
just I just do it because it's needed.
yeah.
And I said, okay, well, that's the only thing that was different. And then I thought, well, that means I haven't really been thinking about what I want. Because every time when I think about what I want, it's living this, cafe life with my laptop and just floating around, Bali lifestyle. That's what I want. And here I go, 6 months in. I haven't thought about what I want. I've been just focusing on working, just doing what I needed to do to support my family and my sister. And so I said, okay, so I haven't been thinking about what I want. I haven't really been thinking about my desire or me. Oh, right. Then that means I've been acting selflessly. Right. That's what all the teachings about being selfless was. It wasn't just helping people. It was not thinking about me. Right. Then that's the, let go of the ego because ego is self. And I said, oh my God, I get it now. And the moment that I got it, guess what? Anxiety kicked in. And I said, uh oh. And then I stopped. I went back to work. And then slowly it was like tinkering there. And because what happened, right? When I realized that I was, you know, was doing this and accomplishing this, the sense of me came right back. And the
Yeah.
moment it came right back, so did the anxiety. So then, since that day, that was now over 3 years ago, that was like the last major milestone, that the biggest shift in my consciousness and state, you can say. And since that day, now I've gotten a lot better at staying in that state because there are times where I fall out of it and I go, okay, how can I get back in? And I can't stay in it for really long. And then trying to be aware on whether or not I'm in it takes me out because I can't be aware of myself. So then now I've gotten much better, and my output and what I'm able to do has just been beyond what I could imagine.
Well, this leads in perfectly to beginning to wrap up here, and with the question I ask every guest, and it's based on this quote that I've loved for so long from Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, the Zen master who opened the San Francisco Zen Center in the 1960s, and he did suffer a lot growing up and had a tremendous compassion and a tremendous fierce clarity. And he would say, death is certain, the time is not. What is the most important thing?
So is the question like, what is the most important thing for me? What I think is the
It's
most
however
important.
you hear it.
Ah,
It's however you hear
okay.
it. This is Zen, remember?
Right. The sound of one hand clapping.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You know, what I think is the most important is doing what doing what we want. For me, doing what I want. For you or anybody else, doing what they want. That's what I think is the most important. If somebody wants changes, great, let it change. But I think when we do what we want, then the act of doing so changes us. It's not just the getting what we want part, it's the act of pursuing what we want. Because then that means there's a lot of things that happen. If I go after what I want, then that means automatically I'm not afraid of the resistance or failure or what people think, because if I was, I can't go after what I want. What happens if somebody else doesn't want that? I don't know. And automatically, those things are not there. If I go after what I want, then that means I accept my desire. And that means because it's what I want. If I don't go after what I want, then how can I accept who I am? And then I would have to say, well, I would question it and go, well, am I supposed to want this or am I not? And I can't accept who I am. And by default, you know, um, I stay stuck in my sense of self.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is the most important. I think it allows a person to be free. And when a person's free, that level of joy, the ability for them to accomplish their purpose, what they really were here to do. Because everybody has programs innate in them. There were experiences that led up to this moment when they want X. And therefore, if we don't go after what we want, then we are saying that all of those things that happened before was not supposed to happen. Because right now,
Mm.
my desire is this.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't go after what I want, I'm saying that I shouldn't have this desire.
Mm.
If I shouldn't have this desire, then that means all of those things that happen and the way I am and all that should not have happened. Because if
Mm.
it was supposed to happen, then my desire is valid at this moment. And if my desire was to eat this cake, but I don't want to eat this cake because I know it's not good, then the final desire is don't eat this cake. That means I have a craving, but what I want is to stop eating it. So I still do what I want. Stop. Right? So it's not like it's just go do random things. No, there is a clear intention that a person wants, and they should execute it always to the best of their ability.
Thank you. And thank you for this juicy dialogue. It's fun being with you. I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours and hours and even hang out and not talk for hours and hours and hours and have a great time. That would even be fun too.
Yeah,
So thank
yeah.
you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everything you've lived, the stuff we don't even know about that you've gone through that brought you to this moment. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Scott, for allowing this conversation. I really enjoyed it. You asked very, very, um, really good questions, very thoughtful ones, and I'm happy that you're here, uh, spreading wisdom, spreading knowledge to the world. That's
Thank
great
you.
to meet individuals like yourself.
So everybody, we're going to come back to the beginning and take a few moments to just to be together in quiet and silence. And for some of you that might feel like new or like, what am I supposed to experience? There's no right experience. Just to actually let the mind settle by letting the exhale slow down, soften the soles of the feet and the palms of the hands like you're opening imaginary fists with your mind. And we'll just be together for a few moments here at the end, noticing whatever you notice, reflecting however you reflect. Loving the episode? Click to follow, like, and share it as widely as possible. Want to go deeper with the choice to grow? Explore the show notes. You'll find links there for going deeper with our guests, as well as how to work with me in the work of waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and showing up. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to join you in the next episode.